Howdy, howdy. So, let's discuss the game of life, shall we? It's like that board game where you go around the board and you pick if you're going to take the easier path, not go to school. Then you can also later on in your path go to night school. You're going to have babies along the way, and in the end of that game of life, you get to sell all your properties and your children for extra money. That's not how this life works. So when it comes to this game of life, the real game of life that we're playing, there's certain things that a lot of people forget. You might think you're going to need somebody's approval for you to have value. And I know these are like repetitive messages because I keep being reminded that everyone looks for everyone else to approve their life, their choices. People aren't going to do that. No one is going to do that. You have to do that for yourself. And sometimes you have to bend the rules, not break the rules, but bend the rules to get around obstacles that have been created. And this, in a sense, is the test for you on a level of, can you get outside of your head? Can you get out of overthinking? And that kind of goes with the last video I was making about overthinking everything so much that you're just going to stand here and you're going to wait. And a lot of people will do this one thing and they'll pray for it. Please deliver me. Please God, tell me where I need to be. Please, and never take a step. But the whole thing about having free will, freedom of choice, is that you've got to take a gamble in this life. That's the simplest part of this entire existence, is you're going to have to take a shot. Will you shoot yourself in your own foot? Will you succeed? Or will you just stand there and be like, I'll just wait. Waiting's not going to get you anywhere, because it's the action of actually doing that's going to start deciding if you're going a certain direction. Now, even understand, when you make a choice, you can be setting yourself back. That's called backsliding. You can make a decision that could just propel you forward, and that's progression. But regardless how it goes, you have to make a choice. You're going to have to put aside all thoughts from everyone else of, is that right or wrong? Because if you're looking for anyone else to tell you what's right or wrong, you're asking an outside source to give you their opinion. And then you're putting more weight on their opinion than you are on your own personal opinion. Because we all have one. We all decide what's right or wrong. And it's just like I was talking to somebody the other day about breaking laws. And there's man-made laws that a lot of times are not necessarily ethical. And we've had a lot of leaders in the past that even told us you got to basically bend those rules. And it's just like with Martin Luther King Jr., where he was leading peaceful protests, right? And there were all these rules and laws for colored people at the time. You can't sit in this part of the bus. You have to drink from this certain fountain. You're not allowed in certain areas. You can't even rent a hotel. You got to sleep on the side of the road and wait and see if someone tries to come and beat and torture you and your family. So when it comes down to it, had those laws not been bent or pushed, we would still be living in an outdated mindset, something that allows other people to put themselves on a pedestal based off of their idea of color. So when it comes down to it, you have to start realizing that just because you're doing something outside of what society tells you is allowed doesn't make you wrong. In a lot of instances, it kind of starts creating the hero, the person that's going to come along and be like, no, that's not acceptable. So when you have people that begin to question what is acceptable in this life, that will stand up and speak out against the atrocities that can occur due to narrow-minded thinking that comes from superiority complexes, right? Believing that your culture is more intelligent, or that your sex is more empowered and strong and just more worthy of existing. When you start pushing these boundaries, it starts to create a stir, static in a way, until other people start catching on to what's being said and kind of waking up. Because the more people that wake up to the concept that we live in a dystopia, not a utopia. You know, a dystopia is a dysfunctional way of being, compared to a utopia is more of like everyone comes together, everyone works together to serve the highest good of all people, all individuals, all species, all entities on this planet, because we all need each other to thrive. So when it comes down to it, when you can start actually understanding that you live in a dystopia where it's legal enslavement, you know, you have to work to have those free things in life. The earth gives you food. You can actually build clothing based off of the materials around you. You can actually build your own shelter based off of what that region has to offer. And we've seen that all through history. You know, when I was in South America, they were making bricks out of the land. And they would have them just sitting, and their house would get bigger and bigger as they kept creating these bricks. It's just like if you go over and you see the pyramids in another place. Again, they were building bricks based off of what their region had to offer. So when it comes down to we're looking for guidance and acceptance from a dystopia, a dysfunctional society, how is that going to propel us forward in a successful mindset? How is that going to allow us to even be able to offer something to our children? So I'm urging everyone right now to kind of get with the program, to understand that fear-mongering is a very big thing. That's why the news is very negative. Because if you can keep people in a low vibrational state, then you can keep them on edge, right? Biting their nails. What's going to happen next? And it, honestly, if we look back to when the Twin Towers were hit, that was a moment where I was going from being a child to a young adult. And that moment in itself dictated the emotions that were going to continue of what I was going to walk through as a reality for myself. So as I had to, begin to kind of separate myself from that and see how it affected people, that it put a lot of people into fear and chaos. So then they started doing certain things that they wouldn't normally do, you know, planning to be invaded, planning for martial law, planning to be overtaken by their government, and trusting at that time that they would do what was best for them. But if I fast forward further into my life and start seeing how the government actually functions, it's not by the people for the people. So we have to understand that where we're choosing to place our trust should never be on an outside source, that it really needs to be on an internal aspect. Because you're very intelligent. You're here to be able to do things. Excuse me. Sorry, I ate almonds earlier and it was bothering me. But anyways, you're here to do things that you can't do outside of this physical form. Because once again, I will remind you that we are spiritual beings having a human existence, being driven by energy. Energy is all around us. And it's undeniable that you need these energetic impulses within you to be able to make a move, to be able to have a thought, to be able to even function. Because you could be a bag of bones with a bunch of muscles, but without those synapses firing off, giving you that energetic thought, you wouldn't be able to do anything. And even on the backside of that, there's certain fuel that's required to open up those gateways to allow for that action to take place. That's why a lot of people deal with certain ailments that they are in wheelchairs. Their body doesn't function because they have different aspects of their bodies that have shut down. But the energy is still there. The driving force is still there. So once you can start understanding who you are, where you're at, what you're doing, you can actually start creating a life greater for yourself. And then as you're doing that for yourself, you're seeing it reflect around you. But that's also where I reminded you earlier, you got to get out of your head. Because, like I said, being an Aquarian, I freaking live in my head. I've put myself in so many storms that have tested my strength. And they've actually brought me to the conclusion that I'm very strong. I have a very strong will. And I was told as a child that I'm very stubborn. But I now see that stubborn nature as an inability to be controlled. And that was considered rebellious as I got older. But when it comes down to it, I can either give into a corrupt system or I can rebel against it. By rebelling, that's me telling my spirit, this is not acceptable. This is not everlasting, and this is not going to continue on in the aspect that my children will be able to even witness the world around them. We don't want to confine ourselves to little boxes, little prisons, by listening to certain individuals that do not have our best interest at heart. So when it comes down to it, ultimately your best thing to do is to learn to listen to yourself, trust yourself, listen to that intuition, that inner guidance that's going to help you. And that inner guidance comes from a higher connectivity to something that is outside of yourself. But that takes practice. That practice considers of having faith, praying, taking time to yourself, indulging in the silence, allowing certain things to come and go so certain events will come to pass. Because you're not going to get out of the situation you're in, like this level plane, never going up and oftentimes going down and just making it back to that level plane. Never being able to break that glass ceiling and going, hey, I'm worth more than this. My value is not comparable to everything around me because I'm unique. So once you can understand your unique nature and what you're here to do for yourself, which will essentially add to the collective, because the collective is everything around us. If you hold yourself on such a high, I'll go back to pedestal, the only thing you're opening yourself up to is somebody to kind of bring war to you. Because now you're in a competitive state of being rather than I am you, you are me, we are all together, a unified state. When you can get back into the unified concept and stop separating yourself from the whole, you're no longer alone. But when you separate yourself from the whole and then you look around you and go, this is all crazy, you're going to feel attacked on a daily basis. So you have to have the faith that you are here for a reason. And I've noticed that with the younger generation, there is no point in them living anymore. Technology has gotten to the point where it has corrupted so many people with that instant gratification that they're not okay for one, being alone, having to think. Options are just way too difficult. And everybody has this want for the newest technology, but the technology is just simply entertainment. That it's keeping everyone from this ability to look at themselves. Because when you can look at yourself and be truthful with yourself, then you can begin to manifest a greater reality for yourself. When you can step outside of looking for guidance from that construct that is not here to serve you. It is to serve itself. It goes back to the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. But oddly, the only part of society that is increasing are those that are not rich. So when it comes to stepping outside of that concept, that caste system, that understanding that we're placed in different levels based off of what we have obtained in this form, when you can take yourself away from that and say, okay, that's not valid anymore, you're opening your mind up to something greater, a larger path that will actually allow you to be within this realm, this existence, and do more for yourself than any outside source could ever do for you. So you have to learn to tap out of the false reality of being placed in levels based off of what you're willing to put in. Because honestly, you can get a lot more by doing a lot less, and that sounds ironic. But when it comes down to it, it's still a matter of faith, because even the smallest mustard seed, that little bit of faith you can have, can create the biggest abundance in your life. But it comes down to, like I said, having to get rid of an outdated way of thinking, a way of being raised to believe that we're here to serve a system. Because if you can see the system as, I don't want to say a prison, but more so a learning mechanism, a way for you to start separating yourself from what is creating failure to more so the potential of what can create success. So you have to begin to use your mind differently and no longer let outside sources affect your way of thinking. And yes, fear does come into play because there are man-made laws, unjust man-made laws. And the sole intention of those laws is to keep you on a lesser scale so you're easily controlled. So the poorer population keeps getting bigger. Because in essence, those that are wealthy will tell you that they're poor. Why do they do that? So they can stay wealthy. Oh, I don't have money, but you go on vacation all the time. You eat everything you want. You drive around in fancy cars. It's a concept that if I tell you I don't have it, then I don't have to share it. But when it comes down to not sharing it, it's a form of selfishness that keeps a lot of people down. And when we're down below a certain mark, we're fighting one another. That's so obvious that you look at every place has their own military. And a lot of times those militaries, they are suppressed in their ability to think. They certainly have no individuality. And it's almost as if that whole mindset is pushed onto society in a whole. Because either you're for the country or you're against the country. And that's not exactly how life should work. Because in essence, you should be for yourself, never against yourself. But when you go and you do things that aren't serving your higher good, then all of a sudden people will label you crazy, or they'll judge you for going against the system. Just because you don't agree with something doesn't make you a tyrant. It doesn't make you, what is that term? It's like espionage. You're not a spy. You're not here to destroy anything. You just don't have to agree with it. And you don't have to serve it. So when it comes down to it, yes, it does take courage. It does take strength. It does take the ability to stand up and say, I do not agree and I will not tolerate it. It doesn't mean you have to create war, not with everything around you, but what you can do is separate yourself from that, which is trying to create an imbalance in your life. So when it comes down to it, that's where you kind of have to go seclude yourself for a little bit, make your mind stronger, start standing up for yourself in a loving way, because you need to let you know that you've got your back. Because when it comes down to it, nobody else is going to do that for you. If you can't do it for you, you have inevitably prescribed yourself failure, misery, and of course, the certain death that we all eventually have to come to terms with. But why not learn to live a happy, healthy, loving life full of abundance and prosperity, rather than making it to the deathbed to realize you never really had any control over the world around you? The only thing you have control of is yourself, and that changes the way you perceive everything around you. That's the magic of the world we live in. As you alter your vibration, you alter your behavior, you alter what you are allowing yourself to be subjected to, you're essentially altering your entire existence. So hopefully that didn't sound like a lot of crazy talk. Hopefully somebody understands it, and I will holler at everybody later. Bye.